This episode is brought to you by CuriosityStream. Get free access to Nebula, the new streaming platform built by and for creators, when you sign up for CuriosityStream at the link below. On May 30th, 2020, SpaceX made history by becoming the first private company to launch NASA astronauts into space. The launch was a culmination of years of preparation and development, and despite having to postpone the launch due to weather, when the Falcon 9 rocket lifted off the ground that Saturday, it performed admirably, and the two astronauts aboard the crew capsule safely made their way towards the ISS. As groundbreaking as this moment was, it does raise some serious questions about the future of spaceflight and space industry. In this episode, we're going to take a look at past legislation regarding the ownership of space, and how private companies can cooperate with the world's nations to build a brighter future for everyone. Let's start with a little background. In the late 1950s and continuing through the 1960s, the US and the Soviet Union were slugging it out trying to establish superiority in the new realm of outer space. Both superpowers feared the other becoming dominant and placing new types of weapons in Earth orbit, becoming even more dangerous to each other and the rest of the world. After a very tense period of international competition, the US, UK, and the Soviet Union came together and signed what's informally known as the Outer Space Treaty. This document was the first of its kind, and attempted to establish a basis for international space law. Today, over 100 countries are party to the treaty, with over 20 more working towards ratification. At its core, the Outer Space Treaty is a non-nuclear agreement. It doesn't prohibit military activities in space, nor even the placement of conventional weapons, but it does explicitly ban the use of weapons of mass destruction. It also stipulates that space and celestial bodies must be free to explore by all nations, and that no party may lay claim to any region of space or celestial body. This is all well and good, but the problem with the Outer Space Treaty is that it was drafted back in the 1960s, when our understanding of space was considerably more limited than it is today, which means much of the language was left fairly ambiguous. Fast forward to more recent years, and we've learned that asteroids are often full of incredibly valuable resources, and that we might be able to mine them. There are even some reports to suggest a particular asteroid could be worth upwards of $20 trillion. That's one way to get the attention of large corporations and eccentric billionaires like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. And conveniently, the Outer Space Treaty doesn't explicitly say you can't extract celestial resources as long as you don't claim the area from which you're extracting them. But just to be safe, the US passed the Space Act of 2015, which clarified the country's position on their rights in outer space. The law explicitly allows US citizens and corporations to engage in the commercial exploration and exploitation of space resources, including water and minerals. As some of the world's richest individuals suit up to build their own space resource extraction operations, we should look back to a forgotten episode of the early days of space exploration. Back in the 1960s, a group of underdeveloped nations banded together to form a coalition known as the Group of 77. This group used the strength of their numbers among UN nations to try to influence international space law to prevent it from disproportionately benefiting the world's wealthiest countries. Their goal was a more equitable distribution of profits derived from outer space resources. They believed that space was the common heritage of all humankind, and as such should be utilized to benefit the entire human population, and to help fund underdeveloped nations rather than let extraordinary wealth pile up in the hands of a few powerful countries. The Group of 77 understood the language of the Outer Space Treaty to call for a new economic order that would reduce global poverty and increase the well-being of all nations. The treaty says, the exploration and use of outer space shall be carried out for the benefit and in the interest of all countries, irrespective of their degree of economic or scientific development, and shall be the province of all mankind. In 1970, one delegate to the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space proposed a new legal designation for the final frontier, that of the common heritage of mankind. This was a fairly new idea, originally applied to maritime law just a few years earlier. If space were given this designation, it would lend legal support for the democratic distribution of revenues derived from outer space. In 1973, the group officially called for an amendment to the Outer Space Treaty to include the common heritage language. One delegate neatly summed up the group's position, saying, "It does not seem justifiable that space activities should evolve in a climate of total laissez-faire, which would conceal under the cloak of rationality new ways for an abusive exercise of power by those who exert control over technology." Despite pushback from both the US and the Soviet Union, not to mention a horde of angry businessmen, the final version of the draft did include the common heritage language. In 1979, when the amendment came up for ratification, it was met with intense opposition, including pushback from the Reagan administration, and eventually the group had to abandon it. Another group made a similar attempt in 1988 and was also forced into submission. By 1996, the United States had clarified their stance on the benefit clause to mean vague assurances of helping underdeveloped nations build their own space technology. The final word from the UN Outer Space Committee came in 2014, when they put out an article summarizing their recent meeting. Its headline read, "Outer space benefits must not be allowed to widen global gap between economic, social inequality," Fourth Committee told. And that was that. They paid lip service to the past efforts of their members, but embraced the position of equal access instead of democratic accountability and distribution. Returning to today, we're nearing the end of our opportunity to ensure space industry is democratically regulated. What we're facing is not just a new era of space exploration. It's essentially the handing of a key to an inaccessible realm to the world's richest people. If smaller nations and individuals from around the world speak up now, we could make a real difference here at the beginning of a new era. It's not just national bragging rights that are at stake. It's a political and economic struggle over the very nature of the celestial commons. There are two possible outcomes: the massive intensification of inequality, or the potential for the elevation of all people and a movement towards an egalitarian world. If billionaires, and soon-to-be trillionaires like Jeff Bezos, are allowed to transcend even the resource limits of the Earth and access cosmic resources beyond the reach of the entirety of mankind, they will amass godlike power. The sheer dollar value of off-Earth resources is simply unfathomable, and the repercussions of allowing all that wealth to flow into the bank accounts of a handful of ultra-wealthy and powerful people would have disastrous effects. Instead of buying yachts, football teams, and private islands, space industrialists could buy entire nations. This capitalist techno-utopia would look less like Star Trek and more like Altered Carbon, with those who benefit from space industry physically separated from the unwashed masses and completely above the law and any repercussions for their actions. Space should be considered the common heritage of all of humanity. Like Alaska's Sovereign Wealth Fund, which delivers a percentage of oil revenue to its residents, the same could be done for the inhabitants of planet Earth. Yes, compensate the companies involved in the extraction, but distribute the wealth in a manner that reflects a democratic vision of outer space. If we choose to see the space beyond Earth as an international commons, it would give us a fantastic opportunity to experiment with redistributive mechanisms beyond the usual confines of nation-states. If we can think big picture and establish a sovereign wealth fund for the entire Earth, imagine what that could do for our species and the planet. As space resource extraction grows and becomes a more profitable industry, redistribution of the revenue could create a genuine, global universal basic income, freeing citizens the world over from crippling poverty, elevating developing nations, and furthering the advancement of the entire species. The windfall from space industry could allow nations to invest in clean energy, public works programs, education, and their own space programs, easing the burden on the already existing ones. A superabundance of resources like platinum that are scarce here on Earth could potentially allow for an expansion of automation to the extent that output is dramatically increased and the need for human labor reduced, allowing all people more time to spend with their loved ones and pursue things like the arts, which benefit everyone. There's nothing wrong with making money from space resources, as long as that money is distributed equitably. Now is the time to start talking about the democratization of outer space. Either it benefits everyone, or we're headed for a dystopia of inequality we cannot yet begin to fathom. Outer space shouldn't be about flag-waving and conquest, but about the expansion of human potential beyond the bounds of Earth, in a way that elevates all of us. If you'd like to learn more about some of the upcoming private space missions, I highly recommend you check out Packing for Mars on CuriosityStream. It's a fascinating look at all the challenges involved in landing humans on the Red Planet. If you watch my videos, you'll know I'm a big fan of CuriosityStream. It's an online streaming service with thousands of nonfiction titles from some of the best filmmakers in the game. You can find tons of great episodes like Packing for Mars, and they've got a bunch of material on technology and outer space, which are some of my favorites. Their giant catalog includes content on science, nature, astronomy, technology, and lifestyle, among others. CuriosityStream has always supported independent content creators, so they've partnered with Nebula, the streaming platform built by a bunch of your favorite YouTubers, including me. Nebula is a place for us to try new things and make original content that just wouldn't be possible on YouTube. It's a home for all of your favorite creators outside of YouTube. And there's a ton of cool original content already there, with more on the way. You can get unlimited access to both CuriosityStream and Nebula for just $20 a year. That's less than $2 a month. And it really does help me create more content like this. Give CuriosityStream a shot. Visit curiositystream.com/secondthought. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more like it, consider subscribing to stay up to date with my latest episodes. If you hated it, go ahead and drop a thumbs down. And if you really want to help support my channel, I recently started a Patreon, which you can find at patreon.com/secondthought. You can check out my previous episodes by clicking the links on your screen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.